Hello, and welcome to the Gamer's Closet. I'm your host, Douglas Weed, and today we're going to be talking about Conquest. Conquest is a point-to-point movement strategy game that was made in 1972 by Donald Benge. The game is originally self-published and has been picked up by a couple of different manufacturers over the years. The game runs for about 30 minutes of game time. The original version, is rated for 2 players, and it runs for about 30 minutes of game time. But let's dig into it a little further, shall we? The game of Conquest was a self-published game released in 1972 by Donald Benge. The game was originally based off of chess with more combat variants and movement options to make it a more grand strategy type of game. The game was originally based off of World War II combat maps, so that way you had more options to play with. The game originally came with cardboard cutout pieces of soldiers, ships, knights, and chariots. Later the game was released with plastic and then finally metal pieces. In addition to the material updates, the game was later released with additional pieces, which ranged from castle fortifications, bridges, camels, and even siege equipment. The game was later released in the late 80s with a multilingual edition and was finally released with a 4-player variant to allow one-on-one 4-player combat or team combat. In 2006, the game was finally released as Grand Conquest, which allowed for additional pieces and additional move variants. The game designer Donald Benge, pictured here in 1979 demonstrating Conquest, was unfortunately killed in April of 2007 in a car accident on the Los Angeles freeway by a drunk driver. The game was put into limbo for several years until eventually in 2010 it was purchased by Numskull Games. This video will cover the 1972 and 1975 versions of Conquest. The later editions with the added additional pieces, the multiplayer edition, and Grand Conquest will be covered in a different video. Conquest is played on a game board printed with a land and water map. Each player has 20 land pieces and 6 ships which move around on the map. Numerous spaces on land and in the water are connected by roads or sea lanes designated where the pieces and ships may move. Land pieces may move from one island to another across connecting bridges. Ships may sail under the bridges. Each side of the map has a cluster of 5 red spaces, which is a capital. The objective of the game is to occupy all 5 spaces in your opponent's capital or capture all of their pieces. Each player chooses a side of the board and places their pieces in the capital and adjacent spaces as marked on the game board. Spaces at sea near the capital are also marked for the starting position of ships. The first player begins by making 10 moves. After that, each player makes 20 moves per turn. A move is made by going from space to space following the road or sea lanes. Each piece is limited to 2, 6, or 8 moves per turn, as I will be going over in a moment. You may move 20 pieces once, or 4 pieces 5 times, or move any combination of pieces to a total of 20 moves. The moves of the piece need not be consecutive. You may pass your turn before making all 20 moves. The original 1972 edition came with cardboard pieces, and every other edition after that came with a more traditional look of pieces. Those were either in plastic, metal, or pewter. The first piece I want to talk about are soldiers. Soldiers move 1 or 2 spaces per turn. They may mount an elephant or chariot to get a free ride, as pictured here. They may also make a capture when dismounting. Mounting or dismounting is always a soldier move. The soldier must move to mount or dismount while the elephant or chariot remains in place. Mounting an elephant or chariot may be done from a dismounted position only. The next piece are elephants. Elephants move from 1 to 6 spaces per turn. Elephants may carry 1 or 2 soldiers. Elephants cannot be captured by soldiers. Chariots move 1 to 8 spaces per turn and may carry 1 soldier. Knights move from 1 to 6 spaces per turn, but may move through spaces occupied by their own men, counting these spaces as you go. They must land on an unoccupied space or make a capture on their last move. Knights may not move through the space occupied by an opponent. That covers the basic land pieces. Now to the water pieces. Ships move from 1 to 6 spaces per turn. Ships may capture other ships at sea in the same manner as pieces do on land. Sea spaces close to shore marked with an anchor join a land space, making a seaport or dock. Land pieces may board ships or disembark at these ports only. Of course, land pieces cannot move into the water, nor can they transfer from one ship to another. Ships may carry either an elephant, a knight, a chariot, or 2 soldiers. The elephant may be carrying 2 soldiers, and the chariot may be carrying a soldier. And finally, we have galleons. Galleons move from 1 to 8 spaces per turn and may carry the same cargo as a ship. When 2 soldiers are riding an elephant, either soldier may dismount first. When 1 or 2 soldiers are on a ship, an elephant or a chariot cannot board the ship until the soldiers have moved off. An elephant may move up to a port. 2 soldiers on the ship may then mount the elephant in 2 moves, and the elephant may board the ship carrying the 2 soldiers. A ship carrying an elephant and 2 soldiers may come to a port, and either or both soldiers may disembark first while the elephant remains on board. However, if the elephant gets off, they must carry the soldiers with them. You capture your opponent's pieces by moving onto their space and replacing them with your own piece, as done in chess. Any piece may capture any other piece, except soldiers may not capture elephants. A recapture is a defensive capture made during the opponent's turn. If you capture an opponent's piece, you must stop and allow them to capture or recapture on that space, provided they can do so in only 1 or 2 moves. If it takes 2 moves to recapture, both moves must be necessary to recapture, and they cannot make a separate capture en route. After a recapture, you may go through the rest of your 20 moves. If you make a capture on your last move, your opponent does not get a free recapture, as it is now their turn and they must start counting their own moves. If a recapture is not made, you may continue to move that piece which made the capture as if it were its first move. However, you may not exceed your original allotment of 20 moves per turn. You may capture an opponent's ship or galleon with a land piece while it is in a port simply by moving aboard. This ship is then immediately converted to your own fleet and may be moved on the same turn. If a ship at a port is occupied, it can still be captured by your land pieces, removing its cargo from the board and converting the ship to your own use. When you make a capture, your opponent has the option of recapturing in any way they can in 1 or 2 moves, or may refuse to recapture. Sometimes refusing to recapture is the best defense. For every space you occupy in your opponent's capital, you deprive them of 4 moves per turn. If you occupy 3 spaces in their capital, they will only have 8 moves on their next turn. You immediately regain 4 moves when you capture an enemy piece in your capital. Please note that each space in the capital only has 1 connecting road. You cannot move directly from one space to another within the capital, as these spaces are not connected with each other. The game is won when one player has captured all of their opponent's pieces or occupies all 5 spaces in the opposing capital. If each player takes 10 consecutive turns without capturing a piece, the winner is the player with the most pieces in the enemy capital. A draw may be agreed to at any time. Well, this has been an overview of Conquest. Conquest is a very interestingly created strategic point-to-point movement game. Originally based off of chess. In an interview, Donald Benge stated that he loved chess, but he wanted something more, and he didn't like being confined to a grid system, whereas this gives you a lot more leeway and you can do a lot more things with it. He also said it was based off of World War II strategic maps that you would see in general briefings, so that way you have a grander strategy feel when you're actually playing this game. The game is well constructed. It's very easy to understand, very easy to use. The original version that I have here, again, doesn't have some of the additional features that the later versions do, like fortifications and siege equipment. But for what it is, it's a very solid game. I do know that the game was offered to many different chess organizations and clubs as a next option for players, so that way they could have better competitive edges or try out a new system. When Conquest was released, there wasn't a lot of strategic games on the market, and this is one of the earlier ones that was created. The game's been around for a long time. It has been picked up by Numbskull Games and a couple of European game companies, so it is easier to find. The game itself goes online anywhere from about $30 and up, depending on the edition you can find. A lot of times, Grand Conquest is online for anywhere from about $100 or up. So it just depends on what edition you want to play. But the game is a very solid game. It's very easy to learn, very easy to pick up, very kid-friendly. It is a good option if you want to get people into strategic-based games and you don't want to use something like chess or some of the more mainstream strategy games. But if you haven't played Conquest before, I would recommend playing this game. Well, that's it from us here at the Gamer's Closet. We'd like to thank you for checking out our video on Conquest, manufactured by Donald Benge and his self-published game. If there's a game you'd like us to review or go over in the future, please put in the comments below. Please hit subscribe so that way you can be the first to check out our future content. And as always, please, have a great gaming day.